Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the Shadow and Sun Show. Welcome to an episode of Gatekeepers. Tonight's topic was actually inspired by a conversation I had over on DM James's channel where we were talking about high-level gameplay, and I noticed a large number of people in the chat really seem to have an issue with running high-level games. So tonight we're going to talk about why so many GMs have such a hard time with running high-level games. To my right or left, depending on your perspective, is my good friend Jade. How you doing tonight?
Doing fairly well.
Glad to hear it, man. Glad to hear it. Blazing hot over there?
Getting there pretty quick. Tomorrow's supposed to be in the 108, I think.
Wow. When Jackie was coming from Los Angeles to where we live, they passed through 118-degree weather. I literally would have been pure liquid in the back of the car somewhere, sloshing around.
Well, I mean, there's a difference between the dry heat of the desert and the humid heat of the river valley here in central, Illinois.
Yeah, I learned that in Virginia. It was god awful.
It is awful.
We were putting together, hey, Six Nations. I was working construction, and we were putting in a gun range for the military in August. And that was around the same time I got struck by lightning. And it was god awful. I was, born and raised mostly in California. And even then it was down by the seaside in Huntington Beach. And I had never experienced anything like that. And of course, when I left Virginia, the day I got back, my buddy, longtime buddy, said, "Hey, I'm going to Vegas. You're coming with me." Because I had a miserable time in Virginia. And we went to Vegas for a week. I weighed 225 pounds, which was the heaviest I've ever weighed in my life. For my height and stuff, it was awful. But it was 114 there, and I was able to walk around and not die. So I learned real quick that the dry heat is much different, much easier to deal with for whatever reason. But yeah, I'm not a fan. I used to be a hothouse flower, and as soon as I hit, 55, my body just said, nope, not anymore. Not a fan. Hey, Crafting Gamer, how you doing? Hey, Jade, welcome to the chat.
Right. I don't know why double posts on mine.
Hey, Bo, how's it going? We were just talking about you. Nothing good, of course, but you know where the link is. No, Bo, I am 56. I'm 56 now. Yeah. It's weird. I watch DM James and Humgar, and while they're younger than me, I feel younger than them for some reason. I don't know. Just one of those weird things. Even Jackie says, yeah, they kind of look older than you, Dad. I'm like, well, it's the hair and the fan, and plus 2 charisma bonus I'm getting from it. Thanks, Mages. I know you're not watching, but if you watch this, that meme is going to follow me around for life now, so thank you for that. Nothing good, Bo. Come on. When do I ever have anything to say? Have anything good to say about you, Bo? Right? I'm only in your Friday game and have you on my show every chance I get. Hey, Frost Kitten, welcome to the show. Frost Kitten is a friend of ours from the paranormal side of things, and this is what we do on Wednesdays. Either my show, my channel, or Jade's, or Connell's from time to time, which I don't know if he's joining us, but Bo, they're so old they fart dust. Bo, if you're up to it, the link's there. Connell, same thing. Mar, if you're somehow available, we'll get to the question just a moment. I gotta actually bring them up on my other device, so bear with me. Discord. So shall we? Let's start with the first one and then alternate between your questions and mine. Because we do have actually quite a few of them for tonight's topic.
Yeah,
and I know.
I do have thoughts on higher levels of games, because as many of you know, I do run games that go, as far as D&D goes, well beyond level 20. Far beyond the point where gameplay was meant to end. So, yeah.
Where is everybody?
It's a good question. Maybe they weren't so enthusiastic about the topic. I'm not sure.
Have an actual. It is in private discussion, right?
Yeah, it's in the private discussions.
Okay, I just
sorry. We do this thing called scripting out what we are wanting to talk about, but behind the scenes, just general questions that we share with one another, so we're kind of prepared to kind of talk about the topic. No answers, no canned answers. Let's put it that way. That's one of the things that I do want, whenever we are running these shows, is I would like to have questions available so I can start thinking in that direction, but I don't want any canned answers from people. I do want good examples, though. So,
okay. I got it.
Okay, I've got it right here.
Yeah,
I've got it right here.
It took me a while. Yeah, me too.
Okay.
Just I went past it, and then I went past it again the other direction.
We do have a question in chat. If you want to get to chat. No, Frost Kitten says, "What is the best way to learn to play D&D?"
Honestly, I would recommend going to your local game store or comic book store, whichever you have in your area that actually lets people play D&D in the shop, and see if they have a beginner level game, and see who's in your area, meet them, and tell them you've never played but you're interested in playing. You can watch a lot of live plays on YouTube, but you got to be careful because a lot of them are how do I put it? A little too scripted. They're not really games. They're more like a radio show than an actual game, and you really don't want that. You want to play for real, and you want to find a good group of people that you can get along with. Sometimes you can meet them at a shop. Sometimes you might have people in your neighborhood, but we do a lot of what we call vetting, which is making sure you're going to get along with the folks, because games can break out into all kinds of discussions during gameplay, and if you don't click with the group, it can turn sour real quick, especially if
there's a Chimerian.
If you just have really vastly differences of opinions on things. Hey Kai, long time no see.
My thoughts on resources available online for free that you can go read, so you can learn the basic mechanics, the core classes and whatnot, and you can do that on just about any type of game. It doesn't have to be strictly D&D, but as Shadow said, he said go to your local game stores. I saw Omen post in there some libraries have D&D groups. I know one of the local libraries near me also has D&D groups on Monday nights. The other places I recommend going are your local conventions for gaming. You might be able to score a seat at a table there. As a matter of fact, next week, I'm not going to be on the show because I'm going to be actually in Indianapolis at Gen Con, and I'm going to be sitting down to learn how to play Star Wars D6 by West End Games. I'm going to be learning how to play Palladium and Earth Dawn and a couple other games. Right. So your convention, yeah, right. So your conventions are a great place to learn how to play games, because a lot of people there generally are either new or they're willing to have other people enter the hobby with them. So that is a good place to go learn how to play games.
Right. That's kind of an upper level though, because with the conventions you got to pay to get in. Sometimes you can't just walk in and buy a ticket. Sometimes you have to prepay.
So, well, I mean, that's why I was saying the local conventions, because like my local convention here in town, it's like maybe $5 to get in, and then there's no actual like tickets for a seat at the table. You walk up to the table, and if people are playing the game, you can ask to play the game. Another great way to learn how to start role playing is free RPG Day. It happens in June. So the last free RPG Day has already come and gone. But free RPG Day, you can go to your local game stores and hopefully there's somebody there running content. I did that just this past year or in June. And I ran 3 different games of index card RPG and taught people how to play. We got Scott in the chat, GM Johnny, and the Crafting Gamer.
And Crafting says, so Kai, how many grammar errors have you found in my book? I was told you'll tear me apart on that subject. Nah. I mean, if it's like really, really bad, then yeah, he'll just nope out. Bo, if you're going to join, the link is in the link area in Discord for Gatekeepers.
I try not to be a grammar person, but Scott Clark is good at grammar. Grammar is important to him. And he's also a great GM for going above level 10 as well. His games generally end like level 30, 40. So speaking of high levels of play, let's get into it, shall we?
Yeah, let's start with the first question. And folks out there in TV land, if you want to chime in as well, we'll try to get to all your questions and comments. Only 10.
Yes.
So, Jade, why do you think so many GMs have such a hard time with high-level games?
So, in my honest opinion, the reason why I believe GMs struggle with upper echelons of gaming power levels is some of the game mechanics begin to break down. And in that, I mean that the power curve for the players goes off the charts, whereas comparison to some of the monsters that are the printed monsters, I should say, they aren't on the same power curve or the same potential. You also have a problem where the game master, has to know all of these monsters, and know their abilities, know their tactics, know what kind of things they have access to, and the, list of 10 billion plus spells or powers that they might get a chance to use. The other aspect there is action economy. Players always have more actions than most game masters throw in for monsters. So, if the game master is only throwing like one end all be all monster, that monster is going to get ripped to shreds just by the action economy alone, because the players will have more turns than that monster will. And this is a point of frustration for a lot of game masters, especially at the upper echelons of play, because they feel like whatever they do, it isn't a challenge to the players. And you also have a lot of game masters out there who are wanting to go for balance. Well, here, sorry to say, balance is a false god. You shouldn't believe in balance. You should believe in fairness. Fairness is something you should believe in, but not balance. Make your enemy forces overpowered. Make them, be a terror to behold to your players. They will think of ingenious ways to either get themselves out of the situation or overcome the situation. So that to me is, I think, the reason why some game masters don't like going to the upper echelons of play, because they struggle with, memorizing all the things. Not to mention, you've got how many players at your table, and beyond level 10 or so, like how many unique abilities, feats, spells, powers do they all have that you as the game master have to track? And I'm not saying you have to know their characters. They have to know their characters. You have to have an idea of what those characters are even capable of to even be able to plan accordingly. You have to have some kind of concept in mind for what kind of challenges they can overcome and what kind of challenges they can't overcome. So you have to know some of their characters' abilities. So again, stress point for the game master, because no one mind can contain all of the knowledge of the universe.
With me, I've been playing for a long time, and I never played like Pathfinder 3.5 or 3 point, etc. I did play games like Palladium, which is an incredibly difficult or high level kind of game right to start off with. Your characters, if you were to take like a first level Palladium, let's just say magic user, and have a DM who could dungeon master this character's rules for this character, but this character's rules for another character, and put him in an arena with a first level magic user from any other game system that I know of. Mind you, there's probably some that not so much. That first level Palladium magic user would just tear up even a 10th level, AD&D character, just right off the bat, just boom, just very powerful games. And I also played a lot of superhero games. And believe it or not, that taught me so much, because it's not always about combat. And even when it is, look at some characters, in the comic book world that are, not even really all that super powered. I was thinking about Batman the whole time I was writing up these questions, where depending on which story of Batman you look at, when you first read about him, he's already got this, this massive amount of training behind him, like from year one, where he hasn't even made the costume kind of thing, and he was doing stuff. He was a master of martial arts, and had traveled the world and learned all this stuff before he even put on the cape and cowl. And you might consider that, depending on your game style, that being first level. Well, a lot of Palladium games, even the non superhero games, start you out with a lot of abilities. You're quite the almost expert in your area, so to speak. And from the superhero genre, I learned more about throwing challenges and complications at a group that aren't always combat. Unless your character is literally the lone wolf or the Rorschach, who has no friends and cares about no one, and just goes about and does his thing. Okay, fine. Well, then maybe you're not the player for an actual group, and maybe you'd be better, solo playing with one DM kind of thing. But if you're, a group of people, you all should have other things besides just the adventuring aspect of your life. And focusing in on those other aspects of a character's life will open up just a treasure trove of complications. It doesn't have to be, an actual challenge, so to speak, every time you play. There are humdrum, monotonous things that sometimes you have to deal with. I remember a famous traveler adventure in Dragon Magazine, some of you guys might remember, where the players are just trying to get an exit visa or something like that. And they have to go through all these red tape lines of waiting in line and filling out paperwork and all this stuff. Mind you, it was kind of written as a humorous, way to spend an evening with the players, but it made a really solid point. It's not always just, draw your sword, bash down the door, kill the monster, steal the treasure, and repeat. I mean, that's the way a lot of people play, but it doesn't have to be. You can find a lot of other things, and I find that if you start early with that mentality of putting them through their paces of, what's your real life like? What do you do when you're not, sharpening your sword and getting ready for the next dungeon? What are your actual interests? Who are your friends, your family, your loved ones? And start, pulling them into the story, even though the player's going to probably, I don't care about this, well, okay, they heard you say that, and now your family hates you, and you're not going to be getting any support from them. Pull those issues into the story early so that you can keep using them, and it doesn't feel like, oh, now that we're 10th level, my family's always in trouble and I got to come to the rescue. No, you start doing that early on, because that happens to us. How many of us have gotten a call in the middle of the night from some family member in trouble, need to be bailed out of jail, or they got a flat tire on the side of the road, that kind of thing. Those are, you know, not exactly those kinds of issues, but you can take similar things and throw them into your fantasy or your sci-fi setting and use that kind of a, you know, a hook to begin a new story. Well, yeah, you went to go help by the side of the road, but they're not there. The car's there, but they're not there. What do? Right? Maybe they got abducted by werewolves or aliens. Let's see.
Got an active chat tonight. I
Yeah,
appreciate
it's
that.
in my honest opinion, there's no such thing as overpowered players, just lazy GMs. I tend to agree with that. Whoops.
Yeah, there's been a lot of stuff in the last few minutes.
Right. Well, with combat,
there is a question in here.
If combat takes a lot of time, Omen, it's either because the players don't know what, you know, how to you know, state their actions and get going. You know, there's plenty of time while they're waiting for the other players to, you know, go around the circle of the table and state their action and do their thing. And, you know, if the GM's not up to it, then that could be a situation, or if people are goofing off and, you know, distracting, or, you know, if the rules are clunky, then sure, that can happen. But I've been at tables where it's less than 10 seconds for each player to state their move and roll. I was in a playtest session with Jackie, who's not a very avid role player. That's my son, for those of you who don't know. And we were playtesting a certain game, and it went by really quick after the first day of playing, and everybody got used to the new rules that we were playtesting. The next session, it was like everybody's just boom, boom, boom. I know what I'm doing. Move, roll, on to the next player, on to the monster. And we got through in a 4-hour session, probably 5 or 6 different, you know, pretty, you know, interesting combats, to say the least.
So,
and the fact is, there's also the fact that it's easy to maintain the suspension of disbelief to tell a story at low level, but as you leave relatable or comprehensible at higher level, the story collapses. It can, depending on the genre. Instant death for nearly every attack. Yeah, that's a way to go about it. If you don't like your players and you don't really want to DM, that's a great way to go about it.
So Frost Kitten actually has a question in here. Let me get to that real quick. Do you have to have all your skills before you begin, or can you add as you go? I think I need a little more context with that.
It depends on the genre, the game system. Usually when you start, you'll have a character with everything the character can do and own and knows about. And as you go through the game, you will level up, and from time to time, you'll get new abilities and new skills and things like that. Yeah, Kai, there's a lot of magic systems out there. You know, I would start with, you know, a couple of sheets of paper, take the things you like on one side from different systems and the things you don't like from other systems, and somewhere in the middle, hopefully you'll find a system magic that you actually like. I know the feeling, Scott. It's funny you mentioned typing. I never took a typing class, but the other day, a couple weeks ago actually, I realized that I was able to almost type in the dark, and I'm like, how do I know that? You know, I'm like, wait a minute.
Replacement.
How do I know? You know, like, have you ever had, like, on a tablet, have like one of your little screens like covering your keyboard, and you're like, but that's where the you know, whatever letter is. I'm like, how do I know that letter's there? You know, it was just
memorize, just muscle memory.
Yep. Over you know, the past 20 years of just being online, I guess I picked it up somewhere.
Yep.
When did you go from farmer to warlord or archmage, etc.? Clearing out a cave full of goblins just doesn't cut it anymore. Faction play, diplomacy, and more infrastructure may provide another avenue. Absolutely, that's kind of where we're shooting. What we're shooting for. You know, it doesn't have to always be combat. And your challenges don't have to always be combat. Your situation, it's amazing how when I've dungeon mastered for new groups, they're just like, what are you doing? When's the combat? I'm like, well, you've already actually passed up on a couple of, avenues of combat, and you got yourself here. Pay a little more attention, think ahead, and, remember, we're going to try and, simulate a real world situation and a fantasy world situation simultaneously. Sometimes, the combat's down the alley, not in the bar, or the combat's, not in the cave, it's over the next hill.
I'm actually there are some people who dread me entering a game with them because I will actively avoid combat in many cases. As a matter of fact, Scott has had me at his table, and I got a reputation for garnering allies or cohorts because I would talk my way out of a problem or a situation or a combat by simply offering. I was like, hey, why are you here? Why are you attacking us? And can I pay you to go away? The answer is generally yes.
Player. You would have made a great AD&D player. You actually got sometimes more rewards for that sort of behavior than combat in the original Advanced Dungeons and Dragons.
I can't tell you how many cohorts I've had over the years, not through like feats of, the leadership feat in D&D, but just because I'm like, hey, if you're willing to lay down your sword and stop attacking me, I will pay you to either go away, or I'll give you part of my share of the rewards from our missions, and you can join us. And generally speaking, when given that option, the NPC chooses to join the party. And I've lost track of all of them, but I've had so many over the years, and it's not that I'm not looking for a fight. And in some cases, yeah, my characters do go looking for fights, but in many cases, it's like, how do I avoid this fight? It's not that I don't want to, it's I don't see the point in it. Like the only thing that's going to result from this fight is someone's going to die. Multiple someones might die. I might get hurt, and I'm a mage and I don't like getting hurt. And that's the only result. There's no benefit to it. There's no gain to it other than staying alive. If I can talk my way out and stay alive, I'd absolutely do that.
Good for you, because that's actually good role playing. Unless you're, a bloodthirsty orc barbarian or something like that, and that's all you live for. Why would you relish and run into every single combat without thinking first a little? You may have some wounded party members that are just not up to it, or you're out of magic for that part of the day, or any number of reasons that would make more sense to avoid the combat. I just noticed that too, Bruce. Table breakers assemble. Just as I understand needing a second or two more to think about what you're going to do if you're the first person in the queue, but if you're the third or fourth, there's no excuse. Absolutely. Hey, Flady. Hey, Connell. I thought you were joining us tonight.
I would say there might be an excuse for players who are spellcasters who don't know all of their spells, which if you just gained a level and you just gained a spell, and you're not sure exactly of what its capabilities are, I can forgive that. But as a player who plays casters on a regular basis, know your spells, know your abilities, know what you can do, know what you can't do, and have a plan of action every turn, and take the entire turn of all the other players, while they're taking their turns, take all that time to do any spell research or any tactic research that you need before your turn comes up again.
Take care, Kai. All we're missing is Baron, and it would be the full boat of rogues galleries from Table Breakers. But those of you who can't wait, sorry, that'll be tomorrow.
Yeah, tomorrow's Table Breakers, not today. But yeah, no, I as a mage type player, I'm generally taking all the time I can on all the other players' turns, and I'm looking up what I need to do to be able to get a spell off, to get things lined up right. And I'm kind of calling as a mid range combat person. I'm kind of calling out like, hey, don't go there. My spell's going to go off, and you are going to get hit by it. I'll try to place it so you don't. But be aware, if you enter that zone, it's danger close. But I mean, when I'm taking my time to find the spells, I'm not doing it when the game master says, "Hey, Jade, it's your turn. What are you doing?" I'm like, "Give me a moment. I need to read what the spell does." No, I've already done that. Like, I already know like 3 spells. I've got 3 spells picked out for my next turn, and I take all the time from the moment my turn ends until my next turn to decide what those 3 spells might be.
Owen's got an interesting question. Do you need high levels if you go political in a game? Well,
Absolutely
if it's a level-based game, then absolutely, because that's going to always be a goal of the players who have characters that can go up levels. If you're playing a game where that doesn't matter, it's a skill-based game or something like that, then yeah, no, you don't. But if it's a level-based game, you are never going to convince the players to not want to go up levels. There is a physical reaction when players go up a level. Their brain and body actually go through a series of steps and reactions to the understanding that they went up a level. They just received something, and it will probably start out low, the reaction to it, and as they keep playing, it will become stronger. Almost like a drug-like addiction when it comes to leveling up, or at least that's been my experience. Hey, Grandma. And she says, absolutely, the dungeon does not need to be the combat. It just might be one hard, big, giant trap to get through and out. Then the mooks show up, and the item you liberated, Raiders of the Lost Ark. Exactly. Sometimes a dungeon is literally just the one room full of cells and a torture chamber. I've done that many times. It's getting to that room to rescue your fellow party member, or some political prisoner that you're trying to rescue, or something like that, or maybe you just want to question the guy in there without anybody around. There's all kinds of reasons to take a different route than the super mega dungeon. Here we have Connell joining the show. Welcome to the show, little brother. How you doing?
Tired, hot, great big ball of it's hot out there. Sorry, I didn't join earlier, but I was under the impression I had game tonight because it's that.
Why were you just in black and white? That was weird.
Well, considering my vision is always black and white, I couldn't tell you.
Yeah, it wasn't actually black and white. It was like green.
It was greenish.
Like green.
Oh, I have the TV on for extra light coming this direction.
I see.
There it goes.
Really dark computer. Yeah.
So, now as far as like political games go, I wouldn't say necessarily that you need to go high level to have a political game. You can start the game political. Some of the things that player characters might have to deal with, especially at the lower levels, might actually be missives from court to take to far off lands or something. Right then and there, it gets political because now you've got a person who is ordained by the magistrate, the king or whoever, or the local government to say, hey, you are charged with fulfilling this duty. And when people ask, well, what is the duty? Well, the duty is getting into the political side of things and fulfilling your role to your government. And then once you start to investigate, what it is that you're doing for said government, you might have an opinion as a player character, or even as a player. So the games can start political, but if you are high levels, I mean, like really upper echelons, and the game doesn't have any political intrigue to it,
that sounds like
I only have to I ask why. Like, why would it not have some form of political intrigue? Because it's very likely that you're going to have some kind of domain. It's very likely that you are a power within the world that things quake before you because of it just being so upper tier as compared to almost everything else, unless the world is significantly tilted towards higher levels of all the monsters, all the NPCs and whatnot. In which case, then you're just another one of those powers, and then you have to play politics with those other powers.
What I was thinking kind of goes along with your thought processing. Is the judge, the king, the high cleric? I'm looking for a group of adventurers to deliver, to send message to whatever, to the kingdom that's across the ways. Which by going across the ways, you'll run into all kinds of horrors, outdoor owlbears, whatever. And that's just how the game could start. It's very much, for example, for those who've seen the movie 13th Warrior, he was an ambassador who went to go talk to the said person who found venture on the way. And you can use it, then your party becomes a political tool. Not that the party knows that they're a political tool, but they become one. There's a lot of different ways. And I think if you try to do it, bring in a political campaign at high level, I think the boat's already set. It's just the cleanup, because after you get to a certain level,
that's like I said earlier. That's poor planning and poor pacing, in my opinion. I mean, if the players can be harassed by the town guards, then they can be embroiled into some sort of political intrigue or that sort of thing. And Bruce, are you sure you're not a dad? Because that's two dad jokes back to back. And
I'm sure he's dated. I'm sure he's dated a few women who's had kids. I at least know one of them. So I'm looking at the questions. Which ones have I missed, or have you?
Just the first one. We're
just the first one. Really, we've been answering a lot of chat questions too.
I noticed that. So what was with the aliens and werewolves? That's when I hopped on. And
I'm just giving an example. If I like to bring the players, player characters' families and friends and acquaintances into the game early on. And I said, how many of us have received a phone call from a friend needing to be bailed out, or a family member bailed out of jail, or they got a flat tire in the middle of the night, and you go to help them, with the flat tire, and the car's there, but they're not. Who knows? Maybe werewolves got them, or aliens.
Okay. The only thing I have not called this guy for is bail money. That's like, hey, I have a car issue. Could you help me? Other than that, I don't think I've ever called anybody for bail money, because if I'm in jail, no one, it's my own damn fault.
So,
okay.
Shall we move on to the next one?
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Do you want to give? Yeah.
Nah, screw him.
You're late. You don't get to answer the first question.
Yeah, no, I'm gonna let him go first with the second question. Do you think it's all that hard to create a challenge for higher level characters?
No, actually, I don't. I think that you have to be creative. I think you can make a base class NPC villain, and after doing a little bit of thinking about it, being creative, you can jack that NPC monster up to where it is. And sometimes it doesn't have to be a monster. Sometimes it could be a fucking maze. Maze doesn't care what your character level is. If no one in your party is not clever enough to figure it out, you're all screwed anyways. So no, I do not think that there is. I don't think it's harder to make counters for parties. You just have to be willing to be more creative. Zombies, for example, instead of using normal zombies, take a look at your monster manual and whatever, and kind of bug them out. Find different ways to torque with them that makes them, a hunter, a screamer, a witch, Left 4 Dead style zombies, for example, and all it takes is maybe a day, maybe a little bit longer to figure out how we're gonna do this. But if you have an epic level campaign and you're not putting time into it, then you don't deserve that table.
Real quick, I want to address something Crafting said. It says, yeah, the reason I wasn't on tonight is because the only experience I have with my players doing any sort of government is players using the Iron Fist technique. We'll see. This isn't about either or.
Is this the Marvel Iron Fist?
And it is about either or.
I think,
Okay, you don't have to. You don't have to go into domain play as soon as the players reach X level. Okay, that was heavily implied in AD&D, but it was not always the case. I can't tell you how many fighters never wanted to build a castle versus players at an early level had the money and didn't want to wait till 10th level or 9th level. It's like, well, you don't have to. If you've got the money, you can buy whatever you want. I mean, if you can buy a portable hull, then you could have just taken the money and built a home, a castle, a manor, a fortress. If you've got the money and the ability and wherewithal to do so, why would you not? I mean, do you want to put the money in a bank, or do you want to build a bank vault, in the lower level of your castle? Just say.
Have portable hole will travel.
There is that, but I've seen so many horrible DMs just go after the portable hole like it was like it owed them money. Oh, you went into a magical zone or anti-magic zone, and your portable hole is now a useless piece of cloth, and everything that was in it is now gone. Oh, it sucks to be you.
That's just
I've seen that happen on both. I've seen it happen like 4 times.
That's just fucking mean.
I think there's a difference
when you leave the anti-magic zone, your magic weapons and armor are fine.
Well, I mean, I think that was a difference in rule sets too, because in 3.5, when you left an anti-magic zone with a portable hole or any extra dimensional storage, it would be accessible again, and everything would be there because it was in a pocket dimension.
I just figured the gate was closed. I didn't think it, oomped into the I mean, that's
one DM went so far as to say well, during that period the connection between the two was severed, so all that stuff spilled out into God knows where.
Astral.
I'm not saying I could see that. I can see that happening. It would suck, but I can see that.
Yeah, here's the tip, guys. As a DM, if you don't want the players to have an item, don't give it to them. Problem solved. If you can't handle it, because that's kind of what this is about tonight. If there's anything you can't handle, don't do it. Wait till you're ready. Because trust me, if you keep playing and you keep, being in this hobby, eventually you'll look back and go, God, I can't believe I did those stupid things. Now I've learned, I'm better at it, and I would never do that again. Kind of thing.
Well, keep freaking notes. If anything, you learn tonight. Keep freaking notes.
The only way to learn is to do. Like you can listen to what we have to say tonight, and you can take notes on some of the methods we have used and some of the suggestions we have. But really, the only way forward for you personally to get experience at higher levels of play is to do it and learn it by doing it. I can
learn more from our mistakes than we do from getting it right.
We do, and I can shout from the tops of the mountains like, this is how I higher level play. This is how I believe higher level play should play out or be, and I can shout that from Everest, and it doesn't matter until you yourself go through and do it for yourself. So learn by doing.
So Jade,
as far
how about
as
you?
That right there is a mark of a true friend.
Yeah.
What are you asking there, Shadow?
The question number 2. Do you think it's all that hard to create challenges for higher level characters?
So when I was newer at higher levels of play, I did struggle. I will admit. There were times where I wasn't quite certain what to throw at my party, like what to put in their way, what kind of challenge I needed to make for them. Because I had a lot of combat junkies in a lot of my earlier games. Yep, he is one of them. And everything had to revolve around combat for some various reason here or there. But I did grow bored of that. But as far as like, is it hard to create a challenge for higher levels of play? I'm going to say if it's your first time doing it, it can be. And Scott's kind of pointed it out. It boils down to math as far as TPKs go. Yep. You can have all of the random number generators you want, 0 to 100, 0 to 1,000, 0 to 10,000, and if you sit down and just do the math of it, I can calculate out a TPK. I couldn't care less about what the random numbers are. I couldn't, my guess is that you're going to be hitting on average 75% of the time. But I'm also counting on average the monster hitting 75% of the time. So yes, I can calculate out a TPK just with math. I don't like to. That's boring to me. That's so boring to me. Instead, I would rather, put a thing that might actually be overpowering for the players, that might actually be calculated out. If you did the math, it would end in a TPK. But I'm going to introduce other elements into the room, into the thing, the encounter space that players can take advantage of. I'm going to give them treats on top of my threat. My threat is this horrible thing that can end all of their lives. But the treats I'm going to give them are, here are ways you can mitigate damage. Here are ways you can mitigate its ability to do things. Use the environment to your advantage. Don't let me use the environment to my advantage. Take the environment that I have put in place and use it. Change it. Do something to it. Affect the room, affect the monster, affect the encounter. Like if I'm running a social encounter with like kings and queens and barons and dukes, I expect the players to work the party. I expect the players to work the event, not just the singular person they have to convince to get on their side. I'm expecting the players to go to the individual dukes and duchesses and barons to ask for their aid, to interact with and role play with those other NPCs to try to win them over to their side so they have a unified front. If they do this, they have changed the room from a disadvantage to an advantage. They have gained the support of the room against my foe, against my one or two singular foes, for them to try to combat with words in a negotiation setting. These are things, and I don't care what level they are at that point. Like, you can be level 100. If you can't get the room on your side by the numbers, I've got you. And you can't escape if you don't change something about the encounter space.
For me, I think one of the big issues is people think that once you go from a certain bracket of levels to another bracket of levels, like from 1st to 10th, you should be doing X, and from 10th on, you should be doing another thing. I think that's, for a lot of people I've met, that's a problem. They just want to keep doing what they were doing from 1 to 10. They don't want to, suddenly be playing a war game when they were playing a role-playing game. I like to, sort of at the beginning of the game, session 0, if you will, or whatever, let people know that I'm going to be incorporating these sort of things, these change-ups throughout the story. You may go from here to there to here to there, in different styles of play. There may not be a lot of dungeons for a huge portion of the game or something like that, to make sure that everybody's going to this is going to be a game that sounds interesting to them for the long haul, because part of getting to high level is being able to endure the long haul, and that's something that bothers the heck out of me. If I'm okay if we're gonna, it's this game and we're only gonna play at the 10th level because of reasons, whatever the reasons are. Okay, fine. If the game sounds interesting, every good story has to have an end. Well, cool. But every good role-playing game doesn't have to have an end just because you got to a certain point if the players are willing to still keep on playing. Lord of the Rings is a perfect example. If you go into the appendixes, when everybody else in the story is basically retired, Legolas and Gimli said, "Hell no, we're going over there. We're not done. You guys go retire. Live the good life. But me and my bro here, we're gonna go and do more adventuring, more exploring, because, whatever reasons, that they were that kind of character. Which, if you think about it, if you've got a bunch of humans and elves and dwarves and hobbits in a game, the humans are going to be ready to retire first. Obviously, the half-orcs before that, and by retire I mean get buried, 6 feet deep. But the humans are going to want to retire because they're getting old and decrepit. The elves and the dwarves, and maybe even the hobbits and gnomes with longer lifespans, are going to want to keep going. So let them retire, keep the game going with the other characters, so that everybody gets to a high level situation. Maybe let the characters who humans are retiring roll up some 10th level characters of some other type of character, and let them bring new people in, because that happens all the time in our lives. People come and people go. Well, they don't have to go because they died. Not everybody who's left our lives has left because they died. They moved out of town, and you don't talk to them again, or they retire. They're not into the hobby anymore. But then you get new people come into the hobby, and they're raring to go. They're naturals at it, or whatever, and they're I hate to say it, but maybe they're better than the other people, and they actually further your games more than some of your old players. So I like to let people know what they're going to be in store, what they can look and expect to happen in the game, to make sure that this is the game for them, and that when they do get to high level, they don't feel like, oh, this is too hard for me. I've got too many spells to keep track of, and I never know what to do. Well, maybe making a magic user isn't really the thing for you. Maybe just being a good old-fashioned fighter or thief is more to your talent and your ability. But if you want to play a magic user, and you're okay with just casting fireballs and lightning bolts and 3rd and 4th level spells, and you never want to make magic items and stuff like that, well then, maybe high level play isn't for you as a magic user. Maybe you'll excel as a fighter or a ranger instead.
And some of the challenges I remember as playing in some of Scott's games actually come to mind. When we got up to levels 30, 40 and whatnot, I spent more time as a caster type of character trying to figure out how to change the room or change the encounter space to my allies' advantage, rather than direct casting spells at enemies. Yes, I could do it, and yes, I was effective depending on the character. Like, if I was playing my Magus character, he was very effective at murder, death, kill. My Shadowcaster was actually more adept at leaving people on the shadow plane and saying, "Well, you're screwed, bye," and just leaving them there. But that wasn't so much killing them; that was just leaving them to be killed by the denizens of the shadow plane. But I still changed the encounter space. Like, I've also used Ray of Disintegrate to create pit traps, or to erase areas of like etched runes into stonework, disrupting a spell or magic circle. So as a caster, like, yes, you are you're an artillery piece. You bring shock and awe. That's not all you have to do. Like, right. You can, do vastly different things than just attack enemies. And, if people want to say, oh, you're doing it wrong if you're not casting, offensive spells to the enemies, well, okay, if that's the way you play, awesome, go for it. If it works for you, keep doing it. But if you want to, bend the encounter to your will, learn some of the other spells or other uses for spells. Like, create water. Sure, you would think it's a crappy 0 level spell, and you'd be right in most cases. It creates water enough for people to drink. However, if you get someone soaking wet and hit them with a lightning bolt, you know what it does? Increases the damage. Why aren't combo spells with your arcane caster and your divine caster?
If you find a blue dragon, you could bet your bottom dollar he's going to be living on like an island in the middle of a lake.
An oasis, but yeah, most of them live in the desert.
I want to get to your first question for this topic, Jay. What do you think the focus of gameplay above a certain point should be, and what kind of rewards should be offered? And since you asked the question, I'm going to let Connell go first, and then I'll go in and see what you actually thought about this particular question, because you wrote it. You obviously have an answer. Connell?
The question is what? What
do you think the focus of gameplay should be above a certain point, and what kind of rewards should be offered?
I kind of want to throw on a hat and have a whip and look at you like Indy looked at Short Round and said, fortune and glory.
It's a great game, by the way.
Okay. I didn't know it was a game. Anyways, what should be renownedness? I mean, these characters won't mean anything outside these tables. Everybody's got their war stories, but everybody's got war stories, and it doesn't mean anything to anybody else unless you're at that table when it happened. So, keeping that in mind, I think things that should be used as awards is just basically be able to tell a good story, and someone's like, hey, what's your experience with this? What's your experience that? And be able to say, well, when I was playing a such and such and my DM was doing this, and this is my experience on how to deal or how to handle this situation. Because at the end of the day, it's just stories we're telling each other. You don't get it. You don't go home with a gold, medal. There's, or whatever. There's no trophy at the end of this race. There's just really good stories. And I think stories in its own right, unless you have one of those DMs, and I've had a few that will like give kind of souvenir at the end of the something related to the campaign. Other than that, the reward is being able to tell stories or have inside jokes with your buddies. I don't know if that's the answer you're looking for, but that's, that's honestly.
Well, I mean, so the main point of the question is, and Shadow kind of touched on it with his second question, but like, what do you believe the focus of higher level gameplay should be? Like, what kind of things do you think the group should be focusing on as a whole? And what kind of rewards are you willing to give them for focusing so hard in that direction?
Well, let's see.
That was the intent of my question.
I mean, Darian got sainthood, but what can I do with it? Other than that character that I'll never be able to revisit, he got sainthood. Kevin Ayler became a guardian, and no one talks to him anymore. And these are a high level campaign. This is a high level campaign. So we got things the characters got things, sure, but it doesn't transfer over to the next game. It doesn't transfer over to the next table. So it's just once again, it's just being able to give examples like what we're doing here and telling great stories and having a few jokes with your buddies. That's the reward. That is really the reward at the end of the day. You can't win at AD&D or AD&D or Traveler or any other RPG games, but you can share having good times and good experiences with your friends.
There is a format of convention games that are tournament based. There are role-playing game tournaments.
Yeah, if I got a commander deck for Magic the Gathering and I, went to Friday Night Magic, yeah, I can eventually get something out of it, but that's not role playing. That's I'm playing Texas Hold'em for money.
There's tournaments for role playing games, is what I'm saying. Like at like Gen Con next week, I'm going to be going there. There are actual AD&D tournaments. Believe it or not, they do exist.
Oh, I believe you.
And there are prizes.
And there are prizes.
So for me, I don't think that there should be any cut and dried. Like you get to 10th level, you are now in domain play. I don't see why you can't start domain play early on, or never. It really depends on the emergent story where that leads. If that leads you down some path as the GM that you never intended, that's awesome. If you're running a railroad, not so much. But if you're running a pure sandbox, you really shouldn't have something definitive plan for the big boss fight at the end. A period, maybe, but because that's always a good way to end a good story is with the final confrontation, Luke, Vader, whatever you want to call it. But I really don't think there should be one specific way to play high level games. There's so many different things you can do. The more you get experience, the more powerful your characters get, the more options that open up to them, which should lead to things you as the GM never even contemplated, because that's the nature of the beast. They're getting more powerful. You've got 3, 5, 7 players at your table, all with different wants, desires, and needs, and you put them together, and they're going to come up with something hopefully that you never expected, and lucky you get to be along for the ride. Now, as for rewards, I tend to give players rewards, things that they need or things that they want. It's pretty simple, but you can go in a lot of different directions with it. Healing potions, they need those. Okay, if they're doing good, they're probably going to find more of those so they can keep on doing what they're doing. If they start screwing up, they're going to find out that those things are harder and harder to find. And when they finally do get them, it's because they're, more or less kind of back on track, behaving the way they should, the fighter being the fighter, not trying to be the thief or the magic user, that sort of thing, which was kind of an issue in the old days. Players would try to, take over roles that they were completely inequipped for because they just, wanted to be able to do everything. No. Your job is the fighter. Let the thief do the thief stuff. Let the priest do the priest stuff. The magic user do the magic user stuff.
Stay in your lane.
Stay in your lane.
And rewards that they want, those are goals they've set themselves. They want to get this. They want to get that. Well, if they've done all the things that lead them to that point, then the reward is obvious. They've now achieved what they were seeking, and boom, they've created, in essence, their own reward. I don't have to come up with something out of the ordinary, to hand them a Princess Leia medal. They found a way to reward themselves by accomplishing their own goals. So how about you, Jade?
So when I get into the upper echelons of play, my focus as a game master is to take all of the stuff, all the hopes and dreams that the players wanted, because, in theory, I've been keeping touch with their hopes and dreams as characters from session 0 all the way to the upper echelons. And because that is something I do ask for. Like when a game first starts, I ask, hey, who is this character? What do they want to accomplish in life? Like, what is their end goal? Like, what is their retirement goal? Give me what that might be or what that might look like. I have taken note of this, and I know where that character is going or wants to go. Will they get there? Well, that's up to, how the story emerges and how the players interact or react to what happens. But towards the upper echelons, I am focusing on those players' goals for their characters. That is my focus. I'm closing or capstoning their characters' lives and offering new goals, new challenges for them to try to acquire before they die or acquire before they, decide to retire. So that's both the reward and the challenge or the focus. Individual player capstones. Like, okay, your goal was to become the king of a small nation. Here's your opportunity. There's a land grab out there. Are you going to go seize it? Awesome. You've grabbed you've grabbed the land and you can hold it for a year and a day. You're the king of that land. What's next? What do you want to do next? You've acquired your goal. What's your new goal? And if they decide, hey, this character is happy with what they have, I'm done playing this character. Awesome, great. Let's get you a new character and let's get you rolled up and into the next session.
There's something to be said about actually retiring. Bruce was just reviewing one of my favorite movies this last week, and I always use this line from Cutthroat Island. I've always wanted to do a bit of farming. What a story that guy would have had to tell had he said, I'm taking my share, I'm leaving, I'm going to go do that. And, he's the old farmer, and he gets to tell the tale at the local tavern every once in a while about how he, got rich and retired. There's something to be said about actually doing that when your characters come to the end of their arc and retire, because that's, in my opinion, I know a lot of people disagree, that's a way of winning. You've taken yourself out of the game because you accomplished everything, and you're like, I'm retiring. I'm getting married, I'm having kids, and I'm going to roll up a new character. And at that point, you kind of take yourself away from the game, but away from the DM, kind of messing with you. You're like, I'm done. You just forget about, Joe Blow. He's retired now, okay? But he's going to live happily ever after. Not every player character gets to say that. You know what I mean?
He's red. He's retired and extremely dangerous.
Yeah, you've heard that one just a couple of times myself.
In the back of mind, what I'm having is like, okay, we're at, I don't know, let's say the party is supposed to go up to 50. That we have all agreed that this campaign is going up to level 50. Okay, it has been done before. I've been in one. I know they exist. But the party cashes a chip at 35. He gets what he wants. He's got the farm. He's got the bride. He's got a ranch full of cattle. Congratulations. He retires. Now, does a player leave said table, or does he grab another monkey suit, roll out the dice, and does he start at a lower level than the rest of the party at 34, 32, or is he now just playing a 35 new character that you have absolutely no idea? Because these guys are supposed to be the rarity. They're not supposed to be the average person.
Do you want me to answer this?
Yeah, go for it. This is this is the counter to that question.
So my answer for you on this is the character has retired and the player has the option of potentially joining again as a new character. They don't have to join if they choose. You know what? I'm going to step back from the table. I'm going to go, do something else for a little while. Awesome, good for you. There's open seat here if you want it. However, if you would like to continue playing in the game, and you did hit on a nail, the characters at upper echelons of play are meant to be the rarity. They're not meant to be the everyday guy going down the street, unless the world is tilted that way. I'm going to say, okay, you're going to roll up a new, like if the party's at level 35, you're coming in at like level 20-ish. Yeah, I'll do that. I'll do 10 to 15 levels lower. Yes, you are going to be a handicap for the party, and the party has to figure out if they're okay with that. If the party is not okay with chaperoning a level 20 character around with them because that character has reached the pinnacle of everything they thought they could achieve, but still wanted to keep going, beyond level 20. One, have a great backstory. Two, tell me of all your accomplishments. Give me 15 great accomplishments from levels 0 through 20.
Let me see your resume.
Yeah, basically, because the party, if the party of characters, decide, hey, yeah, let's take on another mage, granted, our mage retired. We can't just get another level 35 mage. Where are we going to find this? Well, the party starts having, auditions for mages, and maybe they tone themselves back a little bit. Maybe they take the easy street for a little while and go, grind up a mage to their echelon, their power curve.
Or better yet, maybe the party has always needed a monk or a bard. They don't need another mage, but a lower level character that is the actually what they actually need, like a druid or something, for whatever reason.
Mhm.
So he's lower level, but he's still what they need. That's that's better than having another
a level
fighter,
35 with a level 35 druid is still going to smoke most druids out of the fucking room.
Right, but if the party's never had one, I mean,
right? No, if it's something the party
like
needs. Right, even at,
if they've never had a druid,
lower level,
having a lower level
20,
druid is awesome.
Yeah.
Real quick, I want to address something. Oh, okay, go ahead, Jade. But I wanted to address
even if the party was to hire a hireling, because at that point, 15 levels lower than that, they're basically considered a hireling, even if they're at level 20. If they decide, what, let's take on an assassin. I would really like to have one of those in the party so we can stop having to fight the next big bad, mouthy guy, the classic villain who likes to monologue, hey, assassin, anytime, and you go hire an assassin, hey, assassin. So when that guy starts monologuing, what I want you to do is I want you to go invisible. And I just want you to stab him in the back of the brain pan as hard as you can, as many times as you can.
Oh, you're such a 90s child.
Anytime he starts monologuing, just go for it.
Child.
And that's what the the hired assassin does for like 15 levels. They go and assassinate the problems that the party just doesn't want to deal with. And that's how they get the experience to get up to the same power curve as the rest of the players. And I will offer a bonus experience points if I'm playing 3-5 to players who are lower level, and sometimes it's double the experience that the upper level players get. Sometimes it's triple, sometimes it's quadruple, depending on how much lower of a level they are. So they will catch up quick because they're gaining experience fighting things far and away above their pay grade. But they're still learning the tricks of the trade from the pros that they are in the room with. Just like if, on an actual job, you don't just start at a brand new company at a brand new job knowing everything you need to do. No, you learn from the pros. You learn from the people who are there, their techniques, their methods of doing things, and how that company produces a product. You don't just start knowing that unless you've already worked for that company once before and are returning to it. But at that point, you're still technically higher level.
Same job, basically same job, different company.
No, even that. Even if it's the same job but at a different company, because I've experienced this, there are nuances within the other company that you just don't know, and you have to learn from those who are there. You have to know or learn the tribal knowledge of the people who are there.
You get
and by doing that, by working with the people who are there, you gain experience faster than just on your own.
That's fair. So, like I said, you find that in restaurants as well.
Bruce, I would need to know who wrote it, because I may have already read it, but send that to me in Discord, if you will. And Justin, he says he personally likes characters that can be jacks of all trades and masters of none. I'm a big fan of that, provided you're not like the magic user or the priest trying to do that. Those two professions I find really can't do that. Rangers, thieves, and a few other professions can try to fill somebody else's shoes. And half elves or elves in the old days where you could be, you could be an elf fighter, magic user, thief. Let me run one of those. I'm in hog heaven.
Okay, let's say you are first level, and you decide to take a sorcerer class. Just be sorcerer. after the third or fourth session, you don't want to build a new character, but you're not digging this. So you write out the level. Let's say it's a level 2. You give it a go. And then you say, you know what, I'm going to go back into my lane and I'm going to be a fighter. You still have access to your sorcerer spells.
Yeah,
They're not
I
made
absolutely
as first level
despise
spell.
games that do that, where you jump professions like that. For me,
First
I'm
edition
a
was,
big
I mean, how many careers did you have to jump through to become a bard?
2.5, but that was one profession out of the entire game that was allowed to do that. Everybody else had to train to become a new profession, unless you were a multi-class non-human. If you were a human and you wanted to become anything else, you were going to spend potentially decades becoming first level in a new profession. If you were a fighter and you want to become a magic user and you're like 19, you're going to be spending like 10 or 20 years studying to become a first level magic user. That's why it wasn't done, because that's the way it would really be.
Well,
You can't
unless
just be
the
a
updated
barbarian one
sorcerer.
day and then the next you're a freaking wizard.
Hold on.
You can't do that.
But
Well,
with
we're kind of
sorcerers-
getting off topic here.
Well,
But yeah.
it gets. Yeah, I mean, I like.
So,
when
I
it
mean-
comes to big levels, especially when it comes to epic levels as a player, not to be a one-trick pony. Having a fighter that can do, for example, true shot or
True strike.
true strike, does not rub me the wrong way because he has that one little flare.
Well, my
And
problem
how many-
is that you can switch professions that quick. I'm not okay
Yeah.
with that. That just doesn't make any sense.
A lot
It
of the
does, just
classic
not to you.
games,
I-
it
I-
was much harder.
I get it. It's not your bag, but a lot of people out there, it is their bag.
Well, yeah, because they
No,
played
it-
video games and other games that allowed that. But in any sense, sense of the
You
word,
know,
of the real
he's
world,
not
you can't
wrong there,
do that.
Connell.
No, he's not.
He's not wrong, because video games do kind of influence that behavior of switching out your class or your type just at the snap of a finger or drop of a hat. That is mostly from video games. Granted, there's also no real rules against it or detriment to it in a lot of the games. I mean, 3.5 had some detriment to it. Like there was XP penalties or experience point penalties for trying to switch classes. And then that class would level up much slower than the rest of the classes, which almost no game master that I am aware of ever truly enforced. So your want to switch classes, because I know you play like one character who's 3 different classes over the course of 5 levels. That's kind of your MO.
I don't. Yeah, it's just my thought process of a
it's your
hero
MO.
is not one thing. I
But-
mean, no true hero in comic books or movies is just one thing.
Right, but that's the thing. You are basing it off of comic books and movies and
books.
video games.
Literature.
But think about it like this: if you have trained your entire life as one profession, and suddenly
Right.
you're like, "Hey, I'm going to switch professions," how fast are you going to pick it up? I'm going to train my entire
Depends on
life to be a
profession,
security guard.
sometimes fast, sometimes slow. Depends on what you switch.
I'm going to train my entire life. I'm going to start my life training as a security guard. Now suddenly I want to be, I don't know, an engineer.
Yeah.
How many years of school is that?
There has to be a reasonable amount of.
Yeah. So training as a fighter, and then switching to wizard or sorcerer, probably more likely wizard because it's book knowledge, should take time. Because you have to learn.
I am not disagreeing with that processing. I wouldn't do wizard. I would do sword because it comes natural. You wake up one day.
Why wouldn't you
get
start with sword then?
You start with sword, then you move on. That was my original
Anyway.
example.
So
I'm gonna go
we've
with,
gone
Jade's
way off
next
topic.
question. Jade, what are ways you escalate encounters?
Okay, so what are ways to escalate encounters? So, when thinking about escalation and escalating encounters, the thing you have to keep in mind, again, you can do it by the numbers. You can plan out encounters that are designed to kill the party in 1, 2, or even 3 turns, just by the numbers. You can do that. I encourage you to do that, actually. But in those escalations, provide ways out. Provide the players the ability to solve it like a puzzle. Like, yes, this encounter will kill you. The floor will get covered in lava, or the room will fill with water. You will drown. But there are ways out. Yes, this encounter will kill you if you do nothing. If you are just there to be acted upon, your character's dead. If your character doesn't take initiative, they're dead. So ways to escalate encounters are to introduce new hazards, new dangers. And sometimes the new dangers or hazards are player induced. Maybe they decided, hey, I want to change the environment in this way because I think it'll help. And in reality, if they decide to go that route, it actually hinders them more. Like, that is a possible escalation. Other escalations might include the foe or the opponent having a countdown die. Like, at this turn marker, this character runs over here and throws this lever, and suddenly the room starts erupting in fire and lightning, and now it becomes a hazardous field. The foe is trying to basically put roadblocks in the way of the players to get away, or to end them, because the foe didn't think they were going to last that long, whatever the case might be. Other escalations you might consider are, okay, so the main boss, the main encounter, is much lower level than the players are, so far underpowered by comparison. But even though they're the main boss, doesn't mean they don't have tricks up their sleeve. And those tricks could be, well, this is just a fake body. You're attacking an illusion. I'm not actually here. If you want to stop me, well, you're a little too late. At some point, the characters may have missed a vital clue. And if they've missed that vital clue, the bad guy's, 3 steps ahead of them. They're getting away, and they're fighting the bad guy's illusion. They're fighting the bad guy's plan of action in case someone tries to stop him. So escalate your encounters in creative ways, and even let your players do it by failed rolls. If your players, are trying to affect the scene in a way and their roll fails absolutely miserably, or fails by more than 10, it goes the opposite direction for them, and suddenly the encounter escalates, and now they're working against not just the foe but themselves.
How about you, Connell?
I don't know if there's much of an answer left after that.
Sorry.
No, it's cool. It's cool. I don't run Epic. I mean, I've been in Epic campaigns. I have my thoughts on Epic campaigns. I know if I have an encounter that I think that the party could walk through, if it's a vary between baddies versus environment, it could always bounce up the HP and the AC on the baddie, or the terrain could, you're in the middle of a fight, next thing you know, the ground is shaking. I need everybody to make deck saves. Why? Because the earth is about, the ground at your feet's cracking open because of an earthquake. There's a lot of different ways to do it. I don't exactly know what the math would be for an earthquake, but I'm sure I could figure it out fairly quickly. But to keep the party on their toes is more or less the question. Is creativity. It's just being there. I don't think there are some bad answers. There are some really bad answers out there. You open up a table breaker strip club. That's a bad answer. But there's ways for the encounter to have things that the players were not expecting. An earthquake, a fucking dragon out of nowhere comes flying into the situation. Bruce, there's always ways to keep your party up and going. I mean, always keeping them on their toes. But once again, like the other answer I have is you just got to be creative. You got to be able to think outside the box.
For me, I find nothing hits home more than something personal. Find something that from their past, or maybe something, one of their goals backfires or doesn't go the way they want, or the thing that they're shooting for isn't what they thought it was, or something like that to make them feel something sort of deep inside that kind of notion. I'm also a huge fan of physical challenges. White Plume Mountain, I don't know if anybody here remembers that adventure, was a phenomenal adventure. And one of the biggest challenges in the game wasn't the monsters. There was this classic scene in the game where the players had to make their way across a lava lake, so to speak, and suspended from the ceiling were these chains with these wooden table platforms that the players would have to jump from one platform, kind of like a video game, but this was really early in the 80s, and they would have to try to jump from one platform to the next. They didn't have to necessarily jump, but they could maybe fly or do something else. But for the most part, most of the party had to find a way to use these platforms to get up to the upper level of the mountain. Things like that, a collapsing bridge or a bridge that's kind of rickety, things like that can be just as challenging and memorable as fighting, a demon or a vampire in a certain part of the campaign. So personal or physical.
I definitely agree with the concept of taking some of their goals that they set out, or even some of their keepsake things, the NPCs or the things they've collected along their journey, and turning them against the party or using them against the party is a great way of escalating. Like if one of your players has a romantic relationship with one of the NPCs, they're like, yes, I'm going to marry that character or that NPC, and I'm going to build a kingdom or a duchy and have bunches of kids, and that's my retirement plan. Take that NPC when they're not looking, take them when they're not home, and use them against that player character. Use them in such, don't make them turn on the player character, because everybody expects that. It's something that's overdone. That's one of the things that leads to murder hobos is they don't want to collect anything, they don't want to help anyone, they don't want to be tied to the waist by NPCs, because they're just the players expecting the NPC to turn on them. Don't do that. I'd recommend almost never doing that. Never have your NPCs turn on players, especially if the players helped them.
Yeah, Scott.
It
sours the player, it sours the character.
And it ruins it puts the element of mistrust from that point on, that they'll just stab the NPCs before even talking to them. They're just like, right. I'm not giving you the chance to do that again. Right.
I've had that as both a player, and I've done it as a game master, and I learned my lesson the hard way. That just I made my murder hobos. I know I was the reason for several of my tables becoming murder hobos, because I did that to them. So take a note from my mistakes. Don't do that. Once in a great long while you can do it.
Yeah, don't be that guy.
Use those NPCs in as bait. Use them as methods to expand the story or expand their personal goals. Have the NPCs taken by the monsters, have them put in peril, raise the stakes. You want to be king? Here's what it costs to be king. You have to knowingly sacrifice this many people to remain king of this land. because it's cursed. You have to do X, Y, and Z, which are horrible things to achieve your goal. Are you sure you want to do this? Are you sure this is the path you want to take? Oh, you want to become a god? Well, you have to take the place and responsibilities of that god. Are you sure you want this? Take a note from was it the Bruce Almighty? Like he learned very quickly that with that kind of power comes responsibility that the player character may not be ready for, and use that to your advantage as a game master. Raise the stakes with their own goals.
Or have the woman that you want to marry's dad be an ancient gold dragon. Yeah, I'm not going to forget that situation. Son of a bitch. Thank you, Scott, for flashbacks. And adding Ghost Pepper is a hell no. Because an overdo it, I'm dead. Underdo it, I'm still dead. So no, that's a bad analogy.
For you, yes. Anyway, so
the next question. Do you think it's the fault of poor game design or something else?
Oh, for game masters not wanting to go to upper levels of play?
Yep.
Yes. The answer there is yes.
It depends on the game.
It started to take over on this one immediately, but so there are games that just aren't meant to go over a certain power level. D&D 3.5 is definitely one of them. At epic levels, the game mechanics start breaking down at the seams, and it takes a really great game master to keep it running and to keep it moving. I've heard D&D 5e starts breaking around level 10 and completely shuts down by level 14. Like everything just becomes over bloated and almost not worth it. And this is from somebody, I've heard this from a player or a game master and player of 5e that I've known for the last 5 years. And they've even said that, the game just breaks down. So is it poor game design? I don't know. Is it, people not contemplating what the consequences of those levels are? Maybe. Is it maybe also inexperience on player and game master side? I'm going to say yes. The less experienced you are at doing something, the more mistakes you're going to make. And when people make mistakes, this is general. I'm speaking generally here. When people make mistakes, they have certain reactions to it, and those reactions can range from, oh well, I learned my lesson, never do that again, to, oh, I learned my lesson, how do I do it differently? And be the person who says, how do I do it differently?
I know my Monday.
How would you, Connor? What do you think?
It depends. It just yes, and I've had DM that refuses. And this is when I first got started with 3.5. I had a DM that refused to go after go further than the 15th level, and that just drove me up the damn wall. Because what about 16, 17, 18, 19, 20? At least cap it out was always my. And the answer was just always just no, for whatever reasons. So, and to me, the game always just ended faster than it should have or needed to, because if your cap is 15, I don't know. That's just me when it comes to that. Going to systems, some systems are not meant to be epic level camp systems. 3.5, Pathfinder. That really just
not meant that for that.
Yeah.
You could even say that the original Dungeons and Dragons Advanced, anyways, Gygax himself didn't want players going to 11th level, but that sure as hell changed. Like the second he said that, people are like, no, we're going to do that anyways.
Right, but once again, it falls back.
It's very much a case of don't tell me how to play my game. Right. In action.
It goes back to very much to the capability of the DM that is at the table. If you have a DM that is able to see the shortcomings of the system and fix it, then a system can run to epic level. But as I said, some campaigns are just systems are not, and if the DM's not able to, then you should end at level 15 or level 10. I'm running 5e right now for a group of people, and I'm using Pathfinder as the railroad, and it goes up to 11th level. The party is now 13th level, and I'm like, okay, I wasn't expecting that, and so I'm having my own issues at higher levels for 5th edition. To be fair, I could probably just put more thought into it to slow their fucking roll. But as of right now, it's just I haven't. So yeah, it just depends on the DM. I hate to put everything on the DM's shoulders, but for this one, it is.
Well, yeah, if a GM's not up to the challenge, so be it. Not everybody is, and depending on your experience level as a GM, certainly,
yeah.
Maybe it is better the way they did in the old days, where people had to lose a dozen or more characters before they ever made it past a certain level. The group in the old days, you'd have groups of players that would experience many TPKs, start over, make a new character or a new party, TPK or 75%
Yeah,
dead.
there's just so many times you shoot up.
And eventually the players and the GMs both were learning along the way until the GMs were ready to, ease up a little, a little more fairly maybe. And the players were learning all the DM's tricks, and eventually they could, go up in
Right.
gaming levels simultaneously. Other times it literally is the fault of the game designers and not literally play testing high level play. If you play test high level play, you will quickly realize that your game is okay or needs a lot more work still. Just thinking you can do it all on paper and theorize, oh well, at this level you should get this, etc., and the monsters should be this. That's not how it's going to work out in the real life. At the table, you've got to, as a game designer, play test it. And I wanted to get to this other question, Jade, because it piggybacks on the other one that you wrote, is how or why do you think core game mechanics appear to break down and seem to lose meaning in these upper echelons of play? Yeah, Connell. How or why do you think core mechanics appear to break down and seem to lose meaning in upper levels of play?
Because the game wasn't meant to go that high. Core mechanics is in what pretense? The archer shooting, the healer healing, and where's the question?
Numbers. It could be a range of numbers. Not lining up. It could be an imbalance of attack power to defense power. It could be any one of those things.
Math only goes one direction. Most of the time when you're building an encounter, we try as DMs to make it balanced. I find in Pathfinder, I could put 5 people in front of 20 goblins and have the goblins lose. In 5th edition, not the same because of action economy. So it breaks down. Oh God, the cheap answer is it breaks down when it breaks down, when the game just makes no more sense on paper mathematically. The dragon has 4,032 hit points, but it has an AC of 1. What the fuck am I fighting? Well, we're going to be here for the next 6 sessions fighting this dragon because it has the ability to heal itself. It just doesn't make any fucking sense. It's the trash argument.
I'm going to go again with playtesting. Playtesting doesn't mean just, take 4 characters against every monster. It means different combinations of characters, different numbers of characters, because sometimes you're playing with, 3 players and a DM. Sometimes you're playing with 7 players and a DM. You need to playtest all of the common potential situations. And you can't plan for everything, but you could at the very least plan for the most basic of circumstances that the average gaming group is going to put their DM through. And if you're not going to do that, you're not going to know how it's going to really work out. You have to play test the crap out of games. And when I look at a game and I see like 8 play testers, you know, I'm like, this hasn't been play tested. You know, if a new version comes out a year or 2 later, it hasn't been play tested. You need thousands of hours of play testing.
But how many, you know,
the core producers of said game watching in over all of the circumstances, whether the GM or the player, you have so much work to do if you're going to go into the upper echelons.
So you say you need thousands of hours, and you're not necessarily wrong. You know, but those thousands of hours can be played across multiple tables, and I'm not talking like I need thousands of table hours. No, I need thousands of player hours at multiple tables. Like I can have 8 playtesters, and if they play 20 games that last, you know, between 6 to 8 hours a piece, like there's my hundreds of hours right there, you know. And I can, you know, say, okay, for this level, you know, for this session, we're doing 5th level characters. For the next session, we're doing 10th level characters. For the next session, we're doing 18th level characters. For the next session after that, let's do 35th level characters, and let's see what happens. So yes, playtesting is important for the game mechanics and how the game is designed. But that's, you know, that's more for the game designer's aspect of things, not necessarily for the game master. Now, you as the game master, go ahead.
There's a weird catch to that, because a game should be tested until you get all the hiccups up, but it still needs to be. It still needs to come out on March 3rd of 2000.
Minimum viable product, yes.
So where's the line?
So you play test for minimum viable product first. You know, levels 1 through 10. That's minimum viable product. Right. That's what you have to push out the door. And that's where a lot of the pitfalls are, is a lot of companies are putting out a minimal viable product first. Like that's their goal. Get it to minimal, you know, get it to 80%. And then release that and make changes or erratas as necessary. And that is definitely a method of doing it. But for game masters, you know, when the core mechanics of a game, the core numbers of a game start to break down, and your players at level 25 can't hit the, you know, I'm going to use 3.5 terms because they're the ones I'm most familiar with. So 3.5 had this concept of challenge rating. And the challenge rating was directly proportional or related to player level. And a party of 4 level 21 characters could take on a challenge rating of 21 to 28, roughly. However, there exists a monster in the Epic level handbook that a level 25 party cannot hit at all without a natural 30 on a 20-sided die. They cannot hit it.
What?
Yes, you heard me correctly. By the numbers, there is a monster that you just cannot touch at level 21 that you're meant to be able to fight. You just can't touch it. No. It was, I think, a 3-headed Suresh or something. It was some kind of nonsense. Like nobody in the party could hit it with anything, because we did fight one of these things at whatever the appropriate level was supposed to be. But nobody in the party could hit it. Not even the fighter could hit it except with a natural 20, and they were stacked for hitting things. So the game mechanics kind of broke down between the attack values, the added up total bonuses over a course of a career of 20 plus levels, and the defense rating of the monster. And again, it's probably because 3.5 doesn't actually have an Epic handbook. 3.0 does.
Oh,
and
shit, you're right.
Game masters for 3.5 are running 3.0 rules for Epic levels of play, but the two didn't mesh at that level. Not exactly, not perfectly. So game masters like Scott, who was really great at this, Scott was able to figure out where that mesh happened at and able to tweak up or down things on the monster to make it appropriate for the play at that time. So you, the game master, have to be able to observe what it is you're looking at and what it is you're wanting to throw at your party and run it by the numbers. Go look at bench test numbers and see, like, at this level, how often are my players hitting this number? Like, is it 90% of the time? Is it 25% of the time? Is it 1% of the time? If my players can only hit this number 1% of the time, it is not balanced at all for them to succeed. It is going to be an outright TPK if they can't hit anything, especially if the dice aren't in their favor. So what do? Well, when the game mechanics start breaking down in that method, you have dials within your control. You may not think so. You might want to run rules as written, but sometimes the rules as written aren't working. So dials within your control are damage. You can dial the damage down. Other dials that you can control is, well, disruptions. You can add disruptions to player side or monster side. It doesn't have to be equal either. And durations. You can dial the duration of things. Like, oh, okay, this fight is dragging on a little too long. The monsters either get bored and run away, or the PCs have obliterated over half of them, and they're not looking to stick around because nothing wants to lose its life, so it'll run away. There are things within your control that you can escalate or de-escalate, and practice doing that. Keep it fair, but if the players aren't hitting, throw them a bone, throw them a treat, give them some kind of advantage in the room to help them out in those moments of, oh, I fucked up because I put in a counter here that they cannot beat. I'm going to urge them to run away. I'm going to be like, hey, you guys aren't hitting. What do you want to do? The exit is there. You have that option. There's other things in the room going on. What are you doing? Like, you are not hitting this thing, and take a break from the table. Like, break the moment and be like, hey, so I'm gonna level with you guys. You guys are at best hitting a 25 AC. You will never hit this thing on a 25 or less. You already know this. Like, and that's your best fighter rolling an 18. Are you sure you want to continue this fight? Are you sure that this is the course of action you want to take? As a game master, I'm okay with this if you do. If you don't, give me other options. Next player, your turn. Let's go. You're muted, Shadow.
So for the last question, since we're getting close to the end,
sure.
I'm actually going to cut out a couple of questions because we kind of already covered them. But the last one was one of my favorites. What are some examples or inspirations you can recommend to our viewers to help make higher level games easier to run and more enjoyable for everyone at the table? Connell?
Well, that's kind of a two-way different. Enjoyable and easy cannot necessarily don't always fit in the same boat. For epic level campaigns, for enjoyable, let's start with enjoyable. Having memorable scenarios. Having the barbarian.
But what are the inspirations? What are some things you can use as an inspiration? Books, TVs, movies.
Oh, that direction. Okay, I'm sorry. Okay. Conan the Barbarian. Conan, a 2000 some movie. Forget the storyline. Look at it as, okay, this is what I can take from it to make my own vision of a sword and a sandal type video game. Blade Runner, if you're doing cyberpunk. Literature wise, God, there's a lot. There's always.
Were those really? You really think those were high level characters though?
Conan?
Yeah. Conan
was probably about at that era in his career. I believe he was up there. He took on that.
I would never in all of Conan's career ever put him at higher than 12th level.
Well, depends on what system. once again, depends on what system. Conan took on the first Arnold movie. Conan took on a snake dude. That
who didn't really seem to have all that much magic. He really didn't have that much magic.
Okay.
Because if we're going to talk high level, I'm assuming magic.
No, high level does not always mean magic. Magic is an aspect of it, sure. But you got there's swordsman. I can't think of a swordsman movie off the top of my head where he is just the legend. He's a legendary swordman, and that would be considered epic level. Magic is a part of it, but it doesn't have to be the sole thing at your table for an epic campaign. There could be no magic in your campaign. Sorry, guys. True. Wizards, sorks, druids, clerics, they're all out. Make friends with your local alchemist. So, yeah. Book-wise, I don't know.
Or movie or comic books or,
I don't like video. Comic books because at one scale, comic books, here's the problem. You got Batman and Superman. Well, Superman's basically Jesus on steroids, and no one will ever be as rich or as smart as Batman.
Well, there are a lot of fantasy comic books out there.
Okay. I think...
quite a few, actually.
Punisher be his
Punisher?
I don't know. I don't think I have the right answer to the question.
Ways to make your high level games a real and interesting challenge is you're on the other one. Examples or inspirations?
Yeah.
You're on number 6. Okay. What are some examples or inspirations you can recommend or our viewers to help make higher level games easier to run and more enjoyable for everyone at the table? So Hyperborea, Conan the Barbarian, I could see as higher levels of play, especially not just Conan the Barbarian, but Conan I think it was Destroyer. No, was that one?
There's Barbarian or Destroyer. There was Conan the Barbarian, which was the first one. Then you got Cocaine. Jesus, Conan the Destroyer, which was the second one. Which for bonus points.
That's fine.
Then you have the 2000 something Conan. Then you have
as far as literature goes, my actual recommendations, and I'm a shill for Brandon Sanderson's. I really do love the novels, but read some Brandon Sanderson Cosmere novels, like Mistborn. I would say when Vin fully comes into her power, she has hit level 20. When Kaladin in the Stormlight Archive fully comes into his power, he has hit the higher levels of play. And these are characters you experience over the course of thousands of pages. When they finally come into their power, like they've been through so much, and it feels epic in the moment when they explode with power and are suddenly these epic badasses capable of doing feats that up until then you didn't think was possible. So I would highly recommend reading those books for that kind of thought process or power curve. Other things to consider are as far as movies, it may not have been a great film, but Immortals was a decent enough film showing the power of gods versus mortal beings. I thought it was a fun film for Greek literature. But remember some of your epics, some of the Greek tales and epics like Hercules, the story of Perseus. Achilles was almost an immortal. And he, the only thing that did him in was his one weak spot. But other than that, he was an immortal killing machine. So look to some of your epics, look to some of the epic fantasy novels or even films for inspiration on what epic level play might look like. But as far as running the game, you don't know until you do it. get out there, experience it as a player, experience it as a game master, learn by doing.
I don't know if I'd use Highlander, Grandma, because most of those movies they won by dumb luck.
For me, I would go with the classic Elric. All of the Elric books and all of the Eternal Champion books are phenomenally high-powered. Elric, in book 1, starts out as a multi-class, high-level character right in the very first book, and it just gets harder and harder for him, even though he's already emperor and has all kinds of power. Jade already touched on the classic epic, mythology tropes out there. Obviously Norse mythology as well, Gilgamesh. But another series of books I rarely ever hear anybody talk about is the Magician Apprentice. I think it was Raymond E. Feast with the Rift Wars saga, where the party, if you will, is chock full of high-level characters of, not just magic users and fighters, but rogues and priests and things like that. If you guys have any other suggestions of especially fictional novels, I guess would really probably be the best sources out there. Feel free to throw them in with the chat. Absolutely, Grandma, Arduin is the highest level game out there, going to 100 level with crazy stuff if you ever get there. And if you do, I'm going to want to see your calculator and tap it a couple of times to make sure it's working properly. Yeah.
Just for fun, I made a 300th level character in D&D 3035, so it's fully possible.
Hey, Mages, how was the stream tonight?
Weekend.
There was a part of me that wanted to say Harry Dresden. My God, no, that's not exactly.
Okay, so I can say yes. Dresden Files does go epic.
I don't consider Harry's powerful, but he's not epic level. It would be
I would say he's epic.
Grandfather or the Merlin. I consider to be epic level.
But even having only read the first 5 books, I noticed that the NPCs were pretty high level, and sometimes that's what it you have to realize or take into account that the NPCs should all start out much higher level than the players, not the other way around like in old D&D where everybody was freaking 0 level and the players were the only people who ever went up levels. That kind of thinking is retarded. When you're a little kid, everybody around you is higher level, and as you get older, they go up higher levels just like you do, and everybody around you when you're playing should be higher level than you to a certain extent, certain reason. Not every peasant is going to be higher level than the players, but the shop owners are going to start out higher level, but maybe they've maxed out and they're not really going to get any more XP, because they're just not doing that much buying and selling to get the experience points in the merchant class or what have you. But they're not going to be slouches. The bartender could be a retired 10th level fighter. And
Max
as they go up levels,
I don't know what Max is, but Max is something.
As they go up in levels, people around them should also go up in levels. And these players are going to have to rely on other people besides just the player characters. And that alone can be a great source of inspiration for new stories and new challenges, because the players should actually, unless they're the evil party that's just, pillaging the countryside, they should actually make friends and acquaintances that they should sort of care about, and at the very least be willing to help out from time to time. And if, the 10th level bartender has this, problem and he can't leave, but he needs, some patrons he can trust, maybe he's going to actually set them on a course for something that's going to lead to something bigger because he's higher level than they are.
And, I'm going to go back to Dresden Files just real quick. At the book changes. The book, so I think that's book 12 in the series.
Changes?
That is where Harry Dresden enters epic level. That honestly, to me, if I was to put it into 3.5 terms or into D&D terms, Harry Dresden enters epic level at book 12 changes. That is where things change in power scale, in ability, in challenge. That is where everything changes, and the book is aptly named "Changes for a Good Reason."
It's a great book, and there's a part of me that doesn't disagree with you, but the other part too is there's just other people in his world that
You're
could
right.
lay him
There is.
out.
You're right, there are. But at the same time, if you're playing an epic
Outside
level
what you got.
game, the characters, you know, whatever characters you have in an epic type game or in a high powered game, there's always somebody more powerful. There's always that next person who is more powerful than them.
And
That is how you keep
Yeah.
them in check.
That's fair. I just don't look at. I never looked at Dresden that way.
If I was to put numbers to Dresden Files, as far as after that book, Dresden hits level 21 and changes. However, the Merlin is still level 100. McCoy is level 50. I'm just spitballing numbers here. You know, maybe he's level 70. Who knows? You know, by the time Dresden gets to book 15, you know, he's now level maybe 22, maybe 23. Yes, there are still far more powerful and terrifying forces in the world. But you know what? He's gaining on them. He's going to get there one day. He is one of the forces to be reckoned with, but there's still a bigger fish. There's always a bigger fish.
Lord of the Rings, The Hobbit. I'd throw those now that I'm thinking about it.
Sauron was absolutely epic level, and it took an army to defeat him.
Mm-hmm. Aragorn was a very high level fighter, as was Boromir.
I hate the fact that Gandalf is not a playable character in some of the RPG Lord of the Rings game I have. Sorry, you can't be a wizard. But why? It's not a playable character. You don't get magic. Fuck off.
Yes, thank you, Justin. So, yeah.
Just going through the last
tonight has
before we say
hopefully
goodnight.
Tonight has been informative. Hopefully, we've given everyone out there who wants to take their game to that next echelon of power something to think about, something to consider. And if you haven't found anything we've said helpful, let us know. Ask us questions either in our Discord chat. I know on my channel, where I'm mirror streaming this from Shadow's main channel, the link to our Discord is in my video description. Let us know, hey, I've got a specific question. How would you do this? And I would be personally happy to give my thoughts on how to approach higher levels of game in even a private setting. And there's plenty of game masters and other individuals within our Discord who have experience with this and can speak on this from points of experience, of high experience even. Some of them are even better at it than I am. And I fully admit that.
And before I go, mind you, this conversation was sparked by a chat session over at TM James's channel. And what bothered me is people unwilling to try. Maybe you think you can do it, but try it anyways. You guys are GMs, most of you out there. The art of game mastering is winging it, is baffling them with bullshit and never letting them know that you are not in control. So go out there and try it. Give it a whirl, see what happens, because you can always, throw up your hands in frustration and cancel the game later. But if you can make it through one night of playing, in a game that you don't think you're ready for, and keep them guessing, and always have that smirk on your face, hiding behind your DM screen if that's the kind of player you are, and just let them think that you got this. Eventually, you will have it. You'll be like, oh, they're expecting this. I just pull a switcheroo, things like that, and eventually you'll be gaming epic level games of your own, and you'll be loving it, because there's nothing worse than shutting down a game for no other reason than you just don't think you got it in you. I'm sure you do, you just don't know it yet. Give it a try. What's the worst that's going to happen? the game's going to end anyways, and you're going to all roll up first level characters. Trust me, there's a lot of people out there, like most players, get really, really, really attached to their characters and really don't ever want to stop running those characters. I've met more players that would rather never play again than to not play the main character that they've been playing for a couple of years, maybe even 5, 7, 9 years. They're still ready to play those characters, and you can throw rather mundane things at them, and they're still going to enjoy it. They're still going to find a way to connect with your world and the setting and the situation and make it their own and make it part of their story as well as yours. Don't give up. Give it a try. And if you guys have any issues, any questions, you can always hit us up on Discord or, even here in the chat after the show is over. If especially if you're catching this later on and you don't know how to get a hold of us on Discord, leave some questions here on my show or Jade's show or Connell's show, and we will be more than happy to help you out, because I want to see more epic, high-level games out there than more first-level zero to heroes, because let's face it, that's the majority of the games out there are the zero to hero, not the epic. And I don't know about you, but I'd rather read an epic story than the story of some players that get TPK'd at 7th level.
And just because you have run the zero to hero or the hero's journey doesn't mean the journey ends. The journey is a cycle of going out, exploring, and coming back. And it's on the way back, you find the next thread to the next cycle of the hero's journey.
All spell, smile really big, and lick your eyebrows. They'll believe you every time.
So, all right.
With
well,
that,
yep.
We're going to say goodnight to everybody. Have a great week. We'll be back tomorrow over on Table Breakers to tear apart Jade's game that he ran for us the last 2 weeks. Make sure you come in and give him a high five for the great game that he ran. And, stay tuned, because we'll all have a whole lot more.
Teleporting Jade's game is always a difficult. One does not simply just tear apart Jade's campaign. You can quite simply walk into Mount Doom. Yes, the book showed that you could. Teleporting his campaign is a whole different argument.
You'll be able to catch that on Baron G Rock and Bruce Lombardo's channel, and I will also be mirror casting it tomorrow to my channel. So if you want to check out the rip apart of my Table Breaker game, come check us out tomorrow. Have a good night, everyone.
Bye, everybody. Happy trails.